He trusted her with his heart, but she only wanted his wallet. This billionaire dad's undercover mission is about to expose a shocking betrayal. Get ready for a tale of deceit, heartbreak, and ultimate revenge. Ethan Sterling, a self-made billionaire, paced his opulent penthouse, a frown creasing his usually jovial face. His son, Damien, was head over heels for a woman named Isabella, whom Ethan suspected was a gold digger. Damien, blinded by love, refused to see any flaws. Ethan knew he had to act, and fast. He'd built his empire on intuition and shrewd judgment, and his gut screamed that Isabella was bad news. He needed irrefutable proof, something Damien couldn't dismiss as mere paternal concern. "I have an idea," Ethan announced to his longtime confidant and head of security. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to go undercover. I need to observe Isabella myself, without her knowing who I am." Mr. Thompson raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Undercover, sir?" "As what?" Ethan smirked. "As the new gatekeeper at Damien's estate. She's always there, always charming everyone. I'll see her true colors soon enough." Mr. Thompson, though initially hesitant, understood the urgency of the situation. He meticulously crafted Ethan's disguise, a simple uniform, a convincing limp, and a pair of spectacles that slightly altered his features. Ethan, used to tailored suits and boardrooms, felt a strange thrill donning the gatekeeper's uniform. He practiced his new persona, a humble, slightly hard-of-hearing old man named Mr. Silas. The transformation was remarkable. Ethan, the powerful CEO, was now Mr. Silas, the unassuming gatekeeper. He studied the estate's security protocols, familiarizing himself with the routines. He knew he had to be convincing, not just to Isabella, but to the entire staff. His reputation was on the line, but more importantly, Damien's happiness. Ethan, as Mr. Silas, took his post at the gate. He watched as cars entered and exited, observing the staff and residents. When Isabella arrived, Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. She was undeniably beautiful, with a dazzling smile and an air of effortless grace. But Ethan's years of experience told him that appearances could be deceiving. Isabella greeted Mr. Silas with a polite, albeit perfunctory smile. She seemed more interested in checking her reflection in the rear-view mirror than engaging with the gatekeeper. Ethan noted her designer handbag and expensive jewelry. He wondered how much of Damien's fortune she had already spent. Ethan decided to start small. As Isabella was leaving the estate, he feigned difficulty opening the gate. "Oh dear," he mumbled, "this old gate is acting up again." Isabella sighed impatiently. "Honestly?" she muttered. Loud enough for Ethan to hear. "Can't they hire someone competent?" Ethan's suspicions were confirmed. Her polite facade had dropped, revealing a hint of her true nature. He knew this was just the beginning. He had to be patient, observe, and gather more evidence. One afternoon, a delivery truck arrived with a large bouquet of flowers. The driver struggled to unload the heavy arrangement. Isabella, surprisingly, came to his aid, helping him carry the flowers inside. Ethan watched, intrigued. Was there a genuine side to her after all? He decided to test her further. He approached Isabella and, in his Mr. Silas persona, said, "Those are beautiful flowers." "Miss, they must be for a special occasion." Isabella smiled. "Yes," she said. "They're for Damien. He's been working so hard lately." Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he had misjudged her. But his optimism was short-lived. Later that day, he overheard Isabella on the phone. "Yes, darling," she purred. "The renovations are almost complete. I've chosen the most exquisite marble for the bathroom. Damien has no taste, so I have to take charge." Ethan's heart sank. She wasn't interested in Damien. She was interested in his money. The flowers, the concern, it was all an act. He knew he had to expose her, but he needed a solid plan. Damien's company was hosting a charity gala, a perfect opportunity for Isabella to mingle with the city's elite. Ethan, as Mr. Silas, watched from a distance as Isabella charmed everyone with her beauty and wit. She was a master manipulator, weaving a web of deceit around Damien and his friends. Ethan knew he had to act soon. He couldn't let Damien fall victim to her schemes. He needed to find a way to expose her true colors in front of everyone. During the gala, Isabella lost her diamond bracelet. She made a huge fuss, accusing the staff of theft. Ethan, observing from the sidelines, saw an opportunity. He knew Isabella had simply misplaced the bracelet, but he also knew that this was a chance to reveal her character. He approached Isabella, feigning concern. "Miss," he said, "I might have seen something. Earlier, I saw a woman picking something up near the fountain. It might have been your bracelet." Isabella's eyes narrowed. "Are you accusing me of losing my own bracelet?" she hissed. Ethan shrugged. "I'm just trying to help, miss." Isabella scoffed. "Well, your help isn't needed. I know who took it." She pointed a finger at a young waitress who stood nearby, trembling. "She's the one," Isabella declared. "I saw her eyeing my bracelet earlier." The waitress burst into tears, denying the accusation. Ethan stepped forward. "Miss Isabella," he said, his voice surprisingly firm, "I believe I know where your bracelet is." All eyes turned towards him. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out the bracelet. "You dropped it by the fountain," he said, handing it to Isabella. Isabella's face turned crimson. She stammered, I don't understand." Ethan smiled. "It's simple, Miss Isabella. You're not as clever as you think." Isabella's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Her initial shock gave way to a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "You planted that bracelet," she accused Ethan, her voice rising. "You're trying to frame me." Ethan remained calm. "I simply picked it up where you dropped it, Miss Isabella. Many people saw it." He gestured towards the crowd, several of whom were nodding in agreement. The waitress, now regaining her composure, spoke up. "Mr. Silas is right. I saw Miss Isabella drop the bracelet. I was going to return it to her, but she was already walking away." Isabella's eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally. But everyone was staring at her with suspicion and disdain. Damien, who had been observing the scene from a distance, finally approached. He looked from Isabella to Ethan, his face etched with confusion. "Isabella, what's going on?" he asked, his voice laced with doubt. Isabella tried to put on a brave face, but her trembling hands betrayed her. "Damien, darling, they're trying to turn you against me," she pleaded. "They're jealous of our love." Damien hesitated. He loved Isabella, but he also trusted his father's judgment. He'd seen the way Ethan, as Mr. Silas, had conducted himself, always honest, always helpful. He couldn't shake the feeling that Isabella was hiding something. Ethan, sensing Damien's uncertainty, decided to play his trump card. "Miss Isabella," he said, his voice ringing through the room, "I believe I overheard a rather interesting phone call you made earlier today." Isabella's breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. Ethan pulled out his phone and pressed play. The recording of Isabella's conversation with her friend filled the room. "The fool actually believes I love him," Isabella's voice echoed. "Once I get my hands on his money, I'm leaving him for good. I've already found someone new, someone who appreciates my finer qualities." The recording was damning. Isabella's true nature was exposed for all to see. The mask of sweetness and innocence had finally fallen away, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. Damien's face paled. He stared at Isabella, his eyes filled with hurt and disbelief. "Isabella," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "how could you?" Isabella, realizing that her game was up, dropped the pretense of innocence. "Fine," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You're all fools. I never loved any of you. I was just using Damien for his money." Damien's heart shattered into a million pieces. He had been so blinded by love that he had failed to see Isabella's true colors. He felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly foolish. He looked at Ethan, his eyes filled with gratitude and regret. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for showing me the truth." Ethan nodded. "It was my duty, Damien," he said softly. He knew that Damien was hurting, but he also knew that this was a necessary step for him to grow and learn. Damien turned back to Isabella, his face now hardened with resolve. "It's over, Isabella," he said, his voice cold and firm. "I want you out of my life, out of my house, and out of this city. Don't ever contact me again." Isabella, now stripped of her power and her facade, tried one last desperate attempt to manipulate Damien. "You'll regret this, Damien," she hissed. "You'll never find anyone who loves you as much as I do." Damien simply scoffed. "You never loved me," he said. "You only loved my money." Isabella, defeated and humiliated, stormed out of the gala. Her dreams of wealth and luxury shattered. She had been so close. But her greed and arrogance had ultimately been her downfall. She left behind a trail of broken hearts and shattered illusions. Damien watched her go, a mixture of sadness and relief washing over him. He knew that he had made the right decision, even though it hurt. He had learned a valuable lesson about love, trust, and the importance of seeing people for who they truly are. After the gala, Damien sat down with Ethan, still in his Mr. Silas persona. He thanked him profusely for exposing Isabella's lies. "I don't know what I would have done without you," Damien said. "You're a true friend." Ethan smiled. "It was my pleasure, Damien," he said. "I'm just glad I could help." He paused, then took a deep breath. "Damien," he said, "there's something I need to tell you." Damien looked at Ethan, intrigued. "What is it?" he asked. Ethan took off his spectacles and removed his disguise. Damien gasped. "Dad!" he exclaimed, his eyes wide with shock. "It was you all along?" Ethan nodded. "I'm sorry for deceiving you, Damien," he said, "but I had to. I knew Isabella wasn't right for you, and I needed to prove it to you." Damien was speechless. He couldn't believe that his own father had gone to such lengths to protect him. He felt a surge of love and gratitude for his dad. "I understand now," Damien said, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for everything." Ethan smiled. "I'll always be there for you, Damien," he said. No matter what. The two men embraced, their bond strengthened by the ordeal. The news of Isabella's deception spread like wildfire through Damien's social circle. Friends who had once fawned over her now whispered behind their hands, their admiration replaced with scorn. Damien, though initially embarrassed, found a sense of liberation in the truth. He no longer had to pretend to be happy in a relationship built on lies. He spent the next few days reflecting on everything that had happened. He realized how blind he had been, how easily he had been manipulated by Isabella's charm. He vowed to be more discerning in the future, to trust his instincts and not be swayed by superficial appearances. Isabella, ostracized and humiliated, retreated from the city, her reputation in tatters. Her social media accounts were flooded with negative comments, and her former friends refused to associate with her. She tried to rebuild her life elsewhere, but her past followed her like a shadow. She learned a harsh lesson about the consequences of her actions. She had chased wealth and status, but in the end, she lost everything, including her dignity. The experience was a bitter pill to swallow, but it forced her to confront her own flaws and make some difficult choices. Damien, free from Isabella's influence, began to rediscover himself. He reconnected with old friends, pursued his passions, and focused on his career. He realized that true happiness didn't come from external validation or material possessions, but from within. He started volunteering at a local charity, helping underprivileged children. He found a sense of fulfillment in giving back to the community, something he had neglected during his relationship with Isabella. He discovered a purpose beyond his wealth and status. Ethan, now openly acknowledged as the mastermind behind Isabella's exposure, became a source of wisdom and support for Damien. They spent more time together, discussing business, life, and everything in between. Ethan shared his experiences, his successes and failures, and offered Damien guidance without being overbearing. He taught Damien the importance of integrity, hard work, and compassion. He emphasized that true success was not measured by wealth or power, but by the impact one had on the lives of others. He reminded Damien to always stay grounded and never forget his roots. Damien's perspective on life began to shift. He no longer defined himself by his wealth or his relationships. He focused on personal growth, self-improvement, and making a positive contribution to the world. He realized that he had a responsibility to use his resources for good, to help those less fortunate and make a difference in their lives. He started a foundation to support education and healthcare, initiatives in developing countries. He became actively involved in the foundation's work, traveling to these countries and witnessing firsthand the impact of his contributions. The experience with Isabella taught Damien the true value of trust. He learned to be more discerning in his relationships, to look beyond superficial charm and focus on genuine connection. He realized that trust was earned, not given, and that it was a precious commodity that should be guarded carefully. He also learned to trust his own instincts. He realized that he had ignored his gut feeling about Isabella, and that he should have listened to his inner voice. He vowed to never make that mistake again. Damien, now a changed man, was ready to open his heart to love again. He wasn't looking for a trophy wife or someone who would elevate his social status. He wanted a genuine connection, someone who would love him for who he was, not for his wealth. He met a woman named Sarah at the charity where he volunteered. Sarah was a kind, compassionate, and intelligent woman who shared his passion for helping others. She was not impressed by his wealth or his status, but she was drawn to his genuine personality and his commitment to making a difference. Damien and Sarah's relationship blossomed. They shared their dreams, their fears, and their vulnerabilities. They built their relationship on a foundation of trust, honesty, and mutual respect. Damien knew that he had finally found someone who loved him for who he was, not for what he had. He was grateful for the lessons he had learned from his past experiences. He knew that without the pain and heartbreak, he would never have found Sarah. He had learned to appreciate true love, the kind that was based on genuine connection and shared values. Damien and Sarah got married in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by their closest friends and family. It was a celebration of their love, their commitment, and their shared vision for the future. Damien looked at Sarah, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. He knew that he had found his soulmate, someone who would stand by him through thick and thin. He also looked at his father, his eyes filled with love and respect. He was grateful for his father's wisdom, his guidance, and his unwavering support. He realized that his father had not only saved him from a disastrous relationship, but he had also taught him valuable lessons about life, love, and the importance of integrity. Years later, Damien and Sarah had built a beautiful life together, filled with love, laughter, and purpose. They continued to support charitable causes, making a positive impact on the world. Damien never forgot the lessons he had learned from his past experiences. He remained grounded, humble, and compassionate. Wow, can you believe Isabella's audacity? What would you do if you were Damien? Let me know in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed this wild story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on more juicy drama. Thanks for watching. Love you all.